Good morning and welcome to my garden. I am in serious need of some garden therapy, and what better garden therapy is there than garden therapy in the rain? I have had a lot going on lately, a lot of family stuff, a lot of personal stuff, and there's nothing like a good pruning to make all things better. And no, the rain's not going to stop me. I have been putting off doing things in the garden because we haven't had rain. And now the rain has come and I'm keen as mustard to prune. Pruning when the ground is dry makes it harder for the plants to grow back. When you prune down plants, their roots are also pruned, and that would cause a disturbance in the mycorrhizal network. So I've been leaving everything to grow wild and strong and tall. The pathways are becoming obstructed by my syntropic rows and they need to be pruned down. As soon as I prune them down, they'll prune their roots and that'll start putting more organic matter into the soil. And then they'll pump out their growth hormone, which will cause everything around them to grow. Some of these plants haven't grown a huge amount of biomass. This pigeon pea looks rather sparse, but if I take down what's there, it will trigger new growth and it'll grow more under the ground and above the ground. Some of my garden beds are looking very weedy, but I haven't been willing to weed them because of all the heat, the sun, in our hot subtropical summer. Everything's been needing to shade each other to keep everything alive. So getting rid of some of these weeds will also allow me to plant new things in my garden. I've planted potatoes that haven't sprouted. This rain will help them to sprout. I've got large poinciana branches that are in the road for where we need to walk. Some of those need to come down. The sweet potato hasn't been bearing anything because it's had no water. And this poinciana is completely smothering my figs. I'm really keen to do a clean-up in my garden, and there's nothing like a good bit of garden therapy. So rain, hail or shine, here I am. It's time to do some serious chop and drop. I'm going to be starting my cleanup on contour 1 on the east. Why do I start here? Well, the reason I'm starting here is because of what's in my Syntropics row. Elderberry. Elderberry produces a good amount of biomass, but it also is something that I would consider almost invasive. It sends runner roots out, which sends up new plants, and I don't want it to spread like that. But it also creates berries, which will also sprout new plants. So that's a problem to me. I don't want more plants in this garden than I can deal with, and I don't want them where I haven't planted them. So I'll be taking down this chop and drop row first. This pigeon pea has a lot of biomass here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how my chop and drop row transforms from this into something different by putting all this biomass on here. So that row is going to come down first. There's also a lot of potential in this bed for planting more things. And so by cleaning up, I can plant some more. My stone fruit is a little bit taller than my syntropic row, but I need to prune down my syntropic row so that the sun can reach the stone fruit all day long, not just in the afternoon, because these stone fruit plants are facing west. I think it's already looking better, so much better. Okay, so some of my observations while I'm cutting and dropping. Chopping and dropping. Look at that, getting the words wrong. Okay, so you may notice that I used to chop everything about knee high. That did produce some plants that died. That was too low, it took off too much biomass and the plants just couldn't grow back. You can see how low that is here on this plant. This time I'm chopping it about waist height. So about 1 metre high. And I'm noticing that at that height, that is where there's a lot of new growth starting on these plants. So in my mind, that means I'm making the right decision because the plant's actually doing that already. Another observation, this pigeon pea here has been chopped and you'll notice it has a lot of dead branches in the centre. Now when a plant gets really tall, it does die back in the centre, and so you've got all that dead space that's not producing biomass. So you can see that it's probably more useful to chop a plant back more often so that all of the plant stays alive and producing. These dead branches here, they're not going to be helping the plant at all. If I pruned this earlier, then it would have had more biomass all over the plant and we wouldn't have had so much dead matter. Is the amount of biomass up top greater than what would have grown on a smaller plant? I don't know, but I do believe the amount of time it took to grow this tall, it could have been chopped twice and have produced maybe almost that amount of biomass twice. The reason I didn't chop it was because it was too dry, and so sometimes you just can't. But now I can, because we've got this lovely rain. We've had about 60 mils already over the last couple of days, and today we're forecast to get between 5 and 60 again. So don't know how much we'll actually get, it depends where the rain chooses to go. But we are going to get a good drop today. So all these plants that I have chopped will prune their roots and then they'll grow back happily with the rain. Okay, what kind of care do my papayas need about now? You'll notice this one was cut and the centre has died off quite a bit. But there are still branches that are growing on the edge. But if you have a look at the branches, they are very precariously joined. In fact, that part of the branch is starting to break, and I think they're going to rot and fall out. Potentially, if we get any wind, that will also drop the branch too. You can see from this side that this one is already starting to pull away. Now down the bottom of the trunk, we've got these two here that are growing. I think I'm going to leave those. Should I prune those off? Well, it is summer. I'm not going to prune them off. I'm going to leave them there to continue to be shelter and for keeping the ground cooler because of the shade. When it comes to winter, I may end up taking those branches off because they're all growing together and they'll rub against each other and there won't be a lot of airflow up here near these branches. Okay, what's going on with this papaya? We've got a lot of low branches here. Okay, this one's also been chopped off. There's water pooling there in the centre. There are no branches coming from up high. They all look to be coming from down lower on the trunk. Okay, over this side you can see those branches are creating a lot of great shade for the ground here. It is February. We've still got quite high temperatures, so I'm not going to take them off yet. I'm going to leave them there to provide shade for the other plants. The third papaya on this row also got chopped off because it died off. And you can see again some of these branches are coming up really close to the top, and once again they're likely to fall away, snap off when this top completely rots back. There is fruit on that stem and on that stem, so maybe they might produce something before they snap off. The stone fruit on this row have grown very big and very healthy. I'm really thrilled with their growth over this past 12 months. They've been well shaded by my Syntropics row over this hot, dry, windy summer. I've just chopped back my Syntropics row, so they're going to be receiving a lot more sun and wind and heat over the coming months. It's February, so it's the last and the hottest month of our summer. In March, the weather tends to be a little bit more variable. Now, I won't be pruning these today, but you can see that the centre was open. I had pruned it to an open shape, and a lot of the growth is on the outside now. I see when I prune them back, they're going to be fairly easy to shape because they've got the main structure, the main open structure, and I'll just be pruning off the little branches that have grown inside that structure. In future years, that nice open structure will help these plants produce good fruit. I've finished my chop and drop of contour 1 on the east, and you can see it's a lot more open than it was. So along my Syntropics row, the Elderberry and Pigeon Pea have had a good haircut. I've taken them down to about 1 metre high, and that will leave more of the plant there for regrowing. And you can see some of these stems have got shoots that are trying to regrow. That's great because I want them to regrow. I want them to produce more biomass for me. In between the Pigeon Pea and Elderberry, I have some of my native plants starting to grow. This is Waterhousia floribunda, Cupaniopsis, and this one's a form of senna. This one's called necklace pod. This is a callistemon, and this one I think is an Eliocarpus. So it's lovely to have my native plants to the point where they can be chopped and dropped. My goal will be to phase out the pigeon pea and the elderberry from here so that I have only natives in my chop and drop throughout my entire garden. As in the Syntropics theory of succession, I've needed these fast growing exotic species to help produce the biomass that I'm producing, and there's a good amount of biomass on that row now. On some of my rows, my pineapple plants haven't survived very well. On this row, the pineapple plants have grown quite well, and I've managed to pick a few pineapples from this row, and that's been lovely. You can see through here I've got another one coming there. This is my yacon plant. Some of its lower branches are dying back, and I might just prune those dead looking branches off, keep the productive runs there. I have a lot of jalapeno chilies here. This plant is a great producer. At the moment I don't use many jalapeno chilies. I need to learn how to preserve them. My purple king beans are coming to an end, and they're not producing many anymore. I've harvested some good dried pods from down low, so I can use them to harvest seed for the next season. I do have a cucamelon vine growing here. It hasn't produced anything, and I think it's because it's been so dry, but I'm going to plant some other climbing vegetables on this trellis so that I've got some lovely produce coming on. So we've had 67 mils in the last 3 days. That's a good amount of rain, and you'd think that the ground would be well wet from that. Well, I've been pulling out weeds along here, and I'm noticing that the ground appears dry. Okay, so maybe not completely dry, but only slightly damp. So let's explore that. So we've had the Syntropics row there that's been very tall as my stone fruit, and that may have been capturing a lot of the rain and funneling it straight down to its own roots. And maybe that's not let some of the rain come here to this garden bed here at the front. Another option is maybe the rain's all been coming from the south and the east, and so this has been in a rain shadow. I don't think so, because I've found the same conditions here on the edge of the garden here, also at the back underneath the papaya and underneath the fruit trees. Another option is maybe I've just got really good pore space in my soil. Healthy soil is 40% mineral and 50% pore space. That says there should be a lot of spaces between the particles in the soil. Now, if there are good pore spaces in the soil, that would suggest that any water falling on the surface can go down to the deeper levels, where it's then available to the plants who have deeper roots here. It may just be very slightly damp because the adequate pore spaces are allowing the water to go down deeper into the soil. Now that's what we want, right? We don't want the water to just sit on the surface and be evaporated. We actually want the water to go down into the ground so that the plants can reach it there without their roots having to come up to the surface, where they'll get hot and dried out by the conditions. I have every opportunity here to have good soil with good pore space, because I always have plants in the soil here, and they're always adding organic matter and moving the soil around. I have a lot of worms, I have a lot of other critters that are in here, and you can see I've got a fair amount of organic matter on the surface. Grass clippings, chicken mulch, that is the mulch from my chook pen. I've put horse manure on this bed, and I've got a lot of leaf litter from the larger plants above. So all of that is being incorporated into the ground by the earthworms and the critters that are here to be part of God's cleanup crew. Oh, that's been a good gardening session in my rainy afternoon gardening. Thanks for joining me here.